I first met Barry back, I'm going to say about 14 years ago when I was first learning 3D on my own. And I ran into him at the Orange County swap meet where he was selling his book, Phantograms of Nature. And I bought a book off of him. And then it was several years later that I joined the LA3D club. And how about that? I met Barry again and now we're friends. How cool is that? Barry's has put out several books on Phantograms, a lot of really cool picture books. His latest is Microphant 3D, which I, of course, own a copy of. And it's available at microphant3d.com. I'm sure Barry will be sharing with us some more information on that. So Barry today is going to be teaching us how to do desktop Phantograms. So I'm looking forward to this very much. And I'd like to welcome everybody. Barry, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. Hi, I'm Barry Rothstein, and I'm here today to teach you how to make tabletop Phantograms. That's how I got started on these after a workshop that I went to at the 2004 NSA conference in Portland, Oregon. Steve Hughes was teaching it. He taught it with a great deal of precision, a lot of steps and whatever. I'm trying to do it saying that it's fairly accessible and easy. You'll have to excuse me if this workshop is a little bit jumpy or disjointed. I'll be moving back and forth between an iPod and my laptop, and hopefully I'll get the tech end right and we'll make this thing a meaningful experience. If you'd like to pick up some notes on making Phantograms, I've put together 2 PDF files. I'll show you where you can easily find them. I think that they're going to put the link up on the screen. Several years ago, I produced a PDF tutorial on making Phantograms using Photoshop. More recently, I taught stereography to classes of middle schoolers and put together some workflow notes on 3D photography in general, as well as how to shoot Phantograms and process them both in Photoshop and Stereo Photo Maker. You can find easy links to these at a website for my new book, Macrophant 3D, and that's at http://macrophant3d.com. I'll do a quick screen share and I'll show you the look of that website and where you can find them. Screen share. Okay, so that website is here. Again, it's Macrophant, it's the name of the book, macrophant3d.com. And on there you'll find, here's my old Phantogram tutorial. And if you click on it, it looks like this. And it shows basically how to shoot and process. It's mostly tabletop. I don't think I mentioned them as being tabletop Phantograms, but it looks like that's mostly what I was showing in this. Some other styles that I did as well. And then secondly, these are the workflow notes. And they also have a little bit on just basic stereography. 3D image making, including Phantograms with Stereo Photo Maker and with Photoshop. It looks kind of like this, fairly basic, but it's got some useful information. And again, I think that if you don't have Photoshop and you're not strong with it or you're intimidated by Photoshop, it's quite easy to do this in Stereo Photo Maker. And we'll be going through that. That's one of the things we'll be doing. What is a Phantogram? A Phantogram is a special style of 3D imagery. It attempts to imitate normal vision. That is, to provide both eyes with what they would get in real life. The images seem real, and people often reach out to touch them. Phantograms are shot at an angle relative to their stereo window. And what angle that is subject to discussion, whether you're shooting at a 45-degree angle, or you're shooting at a 30-degree angle. Some people do. I don't try to do them at any particular angle. Mostly I look for a shot that I like. The main aspect in processing a phantogram, whether in Photoshop or Stereo Photo Maker or some other software, GIMP or whatever else, is in cropping the image to a rectangular target grid, effectively reversing out the effects of perspective. What I mean by that, you'll see soon. It's a lot easier just to show you than to try to explain it. Now, in this exercise, to make phantogram, tabletop phantogram, you'll need a sheet of paper, a table or surface to put it on. I usually tape down, if it's a piece of paper, I usually tape it down so the edges aren't sticking up. And whatever objects you wish to shoot, the objects have to be small enough that visually they entirely fall on the surface of that sheet of paper or whatever you're using. Instead of a plain sheet of paper, you can use a napkin or a placemat, something that is a measurable rectangle. Generally speaking, you'll get less ghosting when your subject is fairly low contrast relative to your backdrop. So if you're shooting something that's, really black and white, you might want to have something that's a little on the gray side instead of just a plain white sheet of paper, but you can experiment and see. Another thing is that precision is in your setup is good when making a phantogram, but I'm here to show you that you really don't need to be all that precise to get some pretty cool results. It's fairly easy to do this. So from this point, I'm going to show you what the phantogram setup looks like. I'll show you what it looks like shooting. And I'm going to go to my iPad. So I want to share the screen, start. Here is a sheet of paper taped down. I've got a cup and a little monster here are going to be my subjects. This is kind of an interesting thing here. This is a homemade slide bar that I made when I did my first book and was first playing around with outdoor phantograms and indoor ones too. I've got a camera set up on a tripod that's pretty much looking down. It's on a slide bar. You can do this with a single camera, a cell phone, a stereo camera, however you want to get your left and right shots. I'll start with this. Now I'll be shooting these here live, but in the meantime, I'm not going to use these shots for simplicity's sake and not having to take the time to shoot and then email them or move them over from one device to the other. I'll get fairly well centered here on this. Then I'm going to slide a little left, shoot, slide a little right, shoot. So these are going to be handheld shots. Even though it's good to use precision in a slide bar, you can get some pretty good results just with handheld with your cell phone. Okay, so again, I'll get centered. Now visually, I need this object to fall entirely on here. If it was like this and that went over the back, that wouldn't be good. Usually you put your subject more toward the front. If I was at such an angle that it goes beyond, that's also not good. So you want your object to fit on the, to fall entirely on there. Okay, so given that, I'm going to get centered, slide a little bit left, shoot, slide a little bit right, shoot. And again, what we're going to be working with today will be ones, or the images I'll be showing you. They're probably not as good. The lighting wasn't as good when I shot them yesterday, but that's what we're going to be doing. So now I'm going to go back to the Zoom meeting on here. I'm going to end the screen share.
By the way, Barry, is that
Yes.
What size piece of paper is that?
That is a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that I'm using for this exercise. And it could be anything. I've used larger like, 11 by 14 or much larger, depending on how big your subject is that you're shooting. Obviously, it can't be wider than the sheet of paper that you've got, although there's workarounds when you have odd situations like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the Zoom meeting on my desktop computer and say that I want to share the screen and share. And we're going to go to Photoshop, and we will work these images in both Photoshop and Stereo Photo Maker. Let's see, I'm going to say File, Open. I've got the LA3D Club Workshop on here. I'm going to choose these 4 images here. Okay, and again, the lighting was a little bit better today. Wish it was quite as good. I'm not going into lighting these. You would light these the way you'd light anything, and I'll kind of leave that up to you for now. I won't go into that. I'm just going to slide these over. I tend to work a lot cross-viewing because you can do that with large images. I put these next to each other, and those of you who can cross-view can see the 3D stereo pair of this nice cup. Cups and bowls are kind of cool in Phantograms in that when you produce them, print them out, or you put them on a tablet or something like that, lay it on a table, you can put things in what it seems like they're inside the cups and bowls, and it'll seem pretty seamless if it's well done. That's one of the fun things, is because they are a very precise imitation of reality. Real objects can blend in with them pretty seamlessly. And that's a lot of the fun of Phantograms. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to both images. And I'm going to just kind of show some guidelines here. I'm going to be pulling some guidelines just to illustrate, instead of getting in this what you call a rectangle when you shoot, because of perspective, you get more of a trapezoid. So I'm drawing guidelines to the edges. I'll get rid of them. I'm not going to even use these guidelines later, but in processing. But I'm just kind of illustrating what this trapezoid looks like. And hopefully you can see them and make out what, yeah, I can see them pretty well on the iPad there. If you take a look at the alley, this is the right eye shot. This area here I call an alley, just a term that I came up with. This one on the right eye shot is going to be narrower than on this side, whereas it's going to be the reverse on the left eye shot. This area here, this is going to be narrower than this. Now, it really doesn't matter for the sake of the tabletop Phantograms. You've got good guidelines, but sometimes what I tend to do a fair amount is I take shots like just that don't have rectangles in them at all, and I try to approximate them into Phantograms, and it's kind of good to have a sense of the what these are like. So, and if you want it, we can talk, in Q&A, we can talk about that more later. I'm going to get rid of the guidelines for now because I really don't need them, but it was just to illustrate what trapezoids you end up getting when you shoot look like. All right, here is a cropping tool. This guy right here, we're going to use that. And I'm going to start here and go to an opposite corner. When I do that, it defines an area, and then a little dialog box pops up. And there's a perspective bar in here, or perspective checkbox rather. If this is not checked, I need it to be checked. But if it's not checked, then the only thing I can do is kind of change the aspect of what this rectangle is like. It doesn't really allow me to move. I want to move those corners independently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the perspective box. Once it's checked, it'll stay checked. So you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. I'm going to go and more or less go to the corners. And then what I'm going to do is zoom in. So once I've defined this area more or less, I want to get a little tighter on the corners. So I'm going to hit Control plus. Usually I'll go to about 200%. So by hitting Control plus several times, I can do that. I'm going to then navigate around the image using these here. You can also use the mouse, the wheel on your mouse to go up or down. Okay, so that's one corner. It doesn't really matter what order you do these in. Could be anything. We're in Photoshop. And again, we'll be doing the other image in Stereo Photo Maker, so you get a sense of how to do it there. I think Photoshop is a little more intuitive to what you're doing, but Stereo Photo Maker, you get some really nice high precision phantograms. It makes a lot of sense there too, once you're familiar with how to do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. I hit Control-0 to see the whole image, and there you have it. Okay, so I just hit the enter. Sometimes it makes a really wide image, sometimes a really long one or whatever. It's kind of unpredictable. We go to image size, and here we want to put in, now we want constrained proportions to be unchecked. If it's checked and I change something, it changes the other one. I want it unchecked because I want to define. So I'm going to say the width is 8.5. The height is 11. I'll set it at about 150 resolution, just that I've got a fair number of pixels in here. And I'll tell that, okay. So there's my right eye shot. Okay, now let's take a look at the left eye shot. Same thing. I'm going to start in one corner. We can start, it doesn't really matter what corner you start in. You can roughly put it into position. And here. Okay, now I'm going to do Control plus. Okay, and then again, the order that you do these in is irrelevant. There is in Stereo Photo Maker, you need to go either clockwise or counterclockwise, but we're in Photoshop and the order that you do these in doesn't matter at all. So there's 1, 2, okay, that's 3. And 4. So again, let's take a look at it before I hit enter. You can either hit enter. Another approach is if I just go and click this pointer tool. It says, crop the image. Yes, crop. Okay. Then image size. And again, I go back to here, 8.5. Because I unchecked constrained proportions, it'll stay unchecked until I change that. So it's 8.5 by 11, 150. If I slide this guy over here, those of you who can cross view can now see a phantogram of that cup. It is fairly low contrast to the, it's not great, the lighting is not very good on this, but it is low contrast, so we won't get a lot of ghosting. The last thing I'm going to do with this now is I'll make an anaglyph of it. In Photoshop, I'm going to move this a bit because I lose my tools. Can I move that out of the way? Okay, you don't see it, but I have a difficult time. I go to, I can't see window layers. Oh. Window layers. There, now I got it. I go to channels. In both images, I'm going to say that I want to work in red, but I want to see everything. I want to see RGB. I'll do that in both images. I want to work in red, but I want to see everything, RGB. Years ago, I asked Ray Zone, how do you make an anaglyph in Photoshop? And he showed me this. So it's really quite simple. I'm going to take the left eye's red channel and cover up the right eye's red channel. So I need to say select all from here. You can see that. I'm going to drag this over here. If I held the control key down, it would pop right into position. But there it is. There's your anaglyph of the cup. And if you had an iPad or something, you were to lay it down on a surface. At this point, I would probably choose to crop it a little bit. Don't need quite so much white space all around. And select, deselect. And you can crop it down, probably clean it up, add a little contrast or whatever. Image crop. And there's an anaglyph phantogram of that cup. And again, what's fun with cups or bowls or things like that is that you can put things in them and it seems like they're sitting right in there. Okay, any questions at this point on what I've just done? Okay, let's continue on and let's go to Stereo Photo Maker now. All right, so in Stereo Photo Maker, here's the images of my little monster here, left and right. So I'm going to go to Stereo Photo Maker, a little bit of an older version. And I'm going to say, File, open left and right images. I want to go to LA3D Club Workshop. So here's the left. And it asks, is that the right? And we say, yes, it is. So here is our stereo pair. And so next what we want to do is edit it in here. Now, if you take a look here in the adjust menu, easy create pop-up anaglyph. Now, a phantogram does not need to be an anaglyph, but when Masuji put it together, that's what he called it, and that's cool. It's Alt F. We're going to hit Alt F a series of times, 4 times, ones for each corner, so as to do that. So I'm just showing you on here, you can say, you can go to that, or it's just Alt F. Okay, then we come here. Whoop, I ended up going to the next shot. Let's go back. I've also got loaded in here some of my oldest phantograms, my oldest tabletop phantograms, which is where I started. If we have some time, I'll show you some of those, maybe process 1 or 2 of those. But in the meantime, I'm going to use the wheel on my mouse and zoom well in so I can do some pretty good precision. And I want to be able to see those corners on the 2 shots. Okay, so Alt F once, and you end up getting something that looks like this. So you click here, go to the side shot here. It doesn't matter if you do the left and then the right, or the right and then the left. So that's 1 time. I'm going to slide back over. One thing you have to do is you either need to go clockwise or counterclockwise in the order that you do these. Okay, Alt F a second time. This time I'll do this one first. It really doesn't matter. But you see how you can get in really tight, and get you're perfectly lined up, really, quite well in Stereo Photo Maker without much bother at all. Okay, then Alt F a third time. Here's 1. Here's a second one. And we get our 4th corner. In this case, we're going counterclockwise. We'll see them both. Alt F. 1. 2. Okay, once you've done the 4 corners, you get something like this. Now, down at the bottom, I need to indicate the aspect ratio, 8.5 to 11, and that it's a rectangle. Apply. And then I will say, okay. And it takes a couple seconds. Kind of tend to lose, I'll say view fits in the window. And there you have it. We can zoom
Barry?
in some. Yes.
Should you do the like the Alt A auto adjust and window it before you do this? Before you do this Alt F cropping, or will Stereo Photo Maker just fix that for you?
I'm sorry, the question one more time.
Should you adjust and window the photo before you go through this Alt F process of picking the corner?
Normally, I don't do any auto adjustments or whatever else when I'm making a phantogram. You could, it won't hurt. You still got those lines there.
Okay.
But there's really not much point in doing an auto adjustment and lining them up because you're going to be defining the stereo window very precisely. So there isn't a whole lot of point to it. Good question. Okay, now if you wanted to, you might do, use the free cropping tool and do something like this. In which case there is your stereo pair. Let's see, I need to move this out of the way. Okay, and then we can make an anaglyph of that. So there's a color anaglyph of my little monster. So it's really quite simple. Now, because the monster is fairly low contrast to the white sheet of paper, it looks pretty good. You're not going to get much ghosting. If it was a lot of black, then I wouldn't probably want to use something a little bit more gray as a backdrop. I've also used patterned things and whatever else as backdrops, and it works quite well. Okay, any questions about how this is done in Stereo Photo Maker now?
Alt F.
Again, it was adjust, and it's easy create pop-up anaglyph. This one here is that Alt F. Right. And it's a series of doing that 4 times, once for each corner, whether either clockwise or counterclockwise. I brought along with me as well a couple of other old anaglyphs that I had done, or not, a couple of early tabletop phantograms. Let's say, also you probably want to save these results as you go. In Photoshop, when you get to when you get to this stage, forget the guidelines, probably good to save these 2 images. The way I have them labeled is image 1 OR, which to me says original right, image 1 OL, original left. I might save them at this stage as my own notation is take that the O for original and just put in an L or an X. Save that as image 1 XL and image 1 XR. File, save as. So that you've got those saved at that point. Then if you want to save them as anaglyphs or whatever. Oh, actually, this one is an anaglyph already. You got a step further backward. So, clicking on the wrong one. Whatever the case, typically once you've processed them, then you want to, there, now it's back to its original. That's where I wanted to have saved it. So the processed pair, step forward. Okay, so I've saved them as XL and XR, and then I probably want to save it as an anaglyph as well. In Stereo Photo Maker, same kind of a thing. Probably want to save this thing somewhere along the way as the pairs that you've turned them into. Let's open a couple more images. I'm going to save this thing. I'm going to skip saving. Show you a couple of some of my earliest Phantogram images, tabletop Phantograms. There's this cup that some of you have seen. Oops. Okay, let's get rid of the, we want to go to a side-by-side viewing. And when I was first doing Phantograms, you can see I kind of created these grid lines on a sheet of paper. Oddly enough, I got a little hitchhiking fly that jumped into this shot, and I didn't know it was there. I took a shot, slid over, took another shot, and as far as I know, that fly didn't move. He's in both shots. And so I ended up, was kind of lucky. It essentially became teacup with fly. I'm a little close to the edge here. I barely have made the edge without cutting off the cup or the fly. So let's go ahead and I'll process a phantogram of this one here too, just for the heck of it. So it's going to be Alt F. And let's zoom in a little more. Okay, so it's Alt F. Here. Up. I need to be able to see both of those. Okay, try it again. Alt F. Click there and there. Slide over some. Alt F. There and there. Alt F. Here and here, and Alt F. There and there. Takes us to this. I don't remember what's that. I'm going to guess it was an 8x10. I might even be able to see somewhere on there. If I were to look, I might even be able to see. I probably put it on there. Tell it okay. And it gives us view fits in window. And so there you've got your pair. Let's zoom in some. You can make an anaglyph of that as well. But this in any case, this is kind of, you know, what I've been doing, or how it works there. One of the problems I see with this is that at my if I zoom in, some of my anaglyph
I think I found
falls
out.
a little bit past that borderline. And so I've redone this shot, and kind of, for one, I tend to clone out that line that's running through and whatever to expand this image. So there's ways to fix that up. I'm not sure. There's ways to fix this up in Stereo Photo Maker. I'm not sure where the cloning tool is in Stereo Photo Maker, but I think Steve knows, or somebody, you might know, Carl. I'm not sure.
I know where it is.
I do cloning more in Photoshop. I tried to spot it in a newer version. I've got a newer version of Stereo Photo Maker, but I just don't know where to find the cloning tool in there.
What is the issue?
Oh no, it just, for instance, if I wanted to clone something out, like if I wanted to clone out that gray line running through there or whatever, it's not a significant issue for the sake of this workshop. I think I'm kind of to a point of where I've shown to do what I'm trying to show how to do. If anybody has any other questions, now would be a good time to try that.
Can you see a picture of a deck of cards here?
I do. Yeah, I see your card.
Nice.
So yeah, now I did this. I just did this here during the class here. Follow along, right? Now it seems to be very, like, extremely stretched. Are you saying that, like, so if I were to print this out, lay it on a table and look at it at an angle, it wouldn't look this?
Let me see. Yes. Now it.
I mean, it just seems to be really severe.
Well, doing things that are extremely vertical can be kind of challenging. But yeah, it's, I mean, it seems like, it looks pretty good to me.
All right.
Worked,
I guess I'd
I,
need to
I
look-
usually don't. I usually, a friend of mine used to, in describing how to make a particular abrasive belt, which was the industry I was in, used to say short and fat is where it's at as far as making them and making them easily. I think with Phantograms too, it's probably good to have not vastly super vertical things or not vastly super horizontal things, but somewhere in between tend to work better. But what you did looks cool. I think it worked beautifully.
All right. I'll take your word for it, as you are the master.
Well, just strong, just things that are entirely vertical are challenging to make work well, or to where make really enjoyable phantograms. But I think what you did was quite good.
Well,
That's
I think
the only way you
that
could tell.
probably what I'll do is shoot a few Phantograms this month, and then in the next competition, David Coons can get all upset and not be able to tell which is yours and which is mine.
Hmm.
I guess it would make a big difference if you were looking at it on a tablet, wouldn't it? So you had the surface of the
Right. If we're
phantogram
looking
flat.
down at it.
Yeah, if
you're
you're
looking at down at an
ideally,
angle.
yeah, it's good to look at a tablet is an RGB device, and you're looking at an RGB image, so you're going to get very little ghosting typically, and it's you lay that down on your surface and then look back from an image, and you should get a pretty, that's a very good way to see these, or you print them out, lay them out there, that's why I've chosen the medium of books and note cards as mostly of what I've offered and such is things people aren't going to normally put these on the wall. One could, but you're okay. I'm going to let's exit out of Stereo Photo Maker. I wouldn't take this approach in okay, so let's close this out. Close out this one, go back to Photoshop. Get rid of these images. Now, I did at the NSA recently how to do like dogs and kids, and I'll show you a couple of the images from that really quickly, because that it gives you it's a way to do this and have your lines. So let me just quickly go back to, and then I'll show you this one of doing dogs just on point and shoot with a W3. But there was the NSA 2021 workshop, and try and avoid it. Let's see. Here's some images of a kid, and here's some images of a dog. Let's see. Okay, so here's a boy, here's Caden, and I was using sidewalk tiles so that you get the lines from the sidewalk to use, and that's measurable. So I believe that, I forget whether that was like 2 feet by 4 feet, the stretch of sidewalk. Similarly with this dog shot here. Where'd Casey go? Here she is. Okay, so let's, oops. So this is a way to do dogs and kids and get those lines for your rectangle from here to here to here to here. Now let's go to a recent shot, current files. These are some dog shots that I did. Here's, for instance, I just put this on Instagram. If you can cross view, this is a finished Phantogram. And if you can cross view, you can see this. For those of you who'd rather, I'll do it to parallel view in a second too. But effectively, the ground zero, or the stereo window is on the ground, and the dog should rise entirely up off of there. I'll give it to you parallel view too, make it a little smaller. Let's see. And this is Marty. So those are the prefer parallel viewing. I think it's probably small enough now that you should be able to converge it pretty easily. What's the matter, Ollie? Okay, now let's go ahead and and see how this is made. This is going to be doing a phantogram of a point and shoot shot of a dog. Let's see, let me find some original lefts and rights. Details, date modified. And then let's go back to large icons and we'll get to the original shots. Okay, wake up. Okay, here is Elliot. Let's open up Elliot. All right, now, and again, I've got a lot of extraneous stuff on this window that makes it a little bit more challenging for me to see and do things because I've got all this. Okay, so here's Elliot, and I'm going to draw guidelines. I'm going to say at the top, at the bottom. I'm going to work off of the right eye image, which is actually here on the left, and put together guidelines. It really helps to be able to cross view to do this. If you can't, you want to use a viewer, that might work. And if you look here, this is the right eye shot. And so this alley here is going to be narrower than this one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross my eyes and I'm going to try and match up for the left eye shot. So I'm crossing my eyes and I'm going to pull guidelines to approximately the right places. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you'll notice on this side, the guidelines, this is kind of narrow, this is kind of narrow. You go to the other edge, this is a little wider, the distance between them. That's very typical for a phantogram and how that's going to work. Okay, next I'm going to duplicate the image. So I'm going to come here. Come here. Then I'm going to zoom way in to about 200% on both images. Okay. Slide down here and go across to my first. This will be the bottom left. Once I start to see, there's a guideline there. Now I'm going to go to the other side of this image and slide over until I get to that first guideline. Okay, so I'm going to then go and cross-eye view so as to line these things up in the 4 corners, and I'll use the guidelines. Okay. I'm going to use the right eye shot, this one here, that's going to stay everything the same. The left eye shot, I come here to this tool, essentially it draws it's a rectangle tool. So I'll go to that spot and I'm just going to create that rectangle there just to mark the spot. I'll get rid of it later, but it's handy to have there. Then I'm going to drag this over until I get to there. Same thing with this side. And I'm going to cross my eyes a bit and get to where I've got a line here that matches up. There's 1. Then I'm going to grab this guy here, match it up. Again, here's where it's really helpful to cross your eyes to be able to process these. Okay, there's two. I'm going to grab this tool again, put a rectangle right here to mark the spot. I'm going to go to the top, slide over a little bit to this, slide over a little bit to get to here. It's almost shocking how frequently I do this. It's like, it's almost rare that I have a day that I don't end up doing this a little bit. And I'm going to cross-eye view, bring it down there. That's one. And then, let's see, where a little glare here that I usually don't have when I'm working. Okay, again, third time, I'm up above, so that's going to be my outside. And then I'm going to come over here. There. It looks like, okay, so then fourth one here. Okay. There and there. I don't know if you can really do this well with me at the same time as far as seeing, but ultimately I'm crossing my eyes and marking the spots where those things should be. Pretty sure that's right. That's the higher one and that's the lower one. That's the higher one. Okay, if I go back here, I've got my 4 on the copied image. I've also got my original image here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to and here. Okay, I'm going to zoom way in about 200%, give or take. Where those rectangles come in handy is now because those lines, those vertical lines are a little bit off, but they just kind of hold the place. And then I'll come up here and here. So if you look at it, that's what I'm cropping to. I'll hit enter. Now I've still got all those rectangles I put in there. I go to the pointer tool, I hit delete 4 times, they're gone. I'm going to shuffle this over to the side. I'm going to work on this one. Okay. Go to those 4 spots, the right eye shot, hit enter. Now I've got to guess, I'm going to say view, clear out the guides. I'm going to guess how big this should be. Typically, Phantograms elongate vertically the image. So I'm going to say image, size. Again, the constrained proportions I want unchecked. Let's say this is about 25 by about 30. That's going to be my best guess. 72 DPI is fine, plenty of pixels there. I'm going to do the same to this one. I'm going to do image size. And it's just a guess. 25 by 30. I'm going to go here and say image canvas size. I'm going to double the width and say that I want to keep the current image on this side. And then I come over here and just pop that guy in there. And there's a cross-eyed view of Elliot Phantogram. Again, I might not be quite perfect. It seems like it's a little off. We've been working a fair amount of glare on the patio, and I might not have lined up everything quite as perfectly as I usually do. It's kind of hard when there's a lot of glare coming at me. But that's pretty much how I go about doing a point and shoot shot. I try to keep the camera when I do it, it's a W3 level as I can. And I've done several hundreds of these. I do them all the time.